How's it going, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Hip Drop Podcast. Lucas and I are here for our first episode of 2026. It is the second day of the new year. It is a Friday, January 2026. It was 60 degrees when we recorded 2 days ago. It is now 30 degrees. So that's life in Nebraska for you. But before we get into our last episode of the regular season, which is insane to say, Lucas, how you doing? How you feeling?
I'm feeling pretty glad this regular season's almost over. Chiefs are done, but I'm excited for the playoffs because it feels like it's all wide open and there are more teams capable of going to the Super Bowl this year than any other year, and I do not say that positively.
Yeah, that's very true. That I definitely feel this is the most wide open it's been since 2021. And ironically, that year we had a Super Bowl between two four seeds. I mean, who the hell had Rams Bengals being the Super Bowl when that postseason started? The last 3 years, 2022 through last season, the Super Bowl matchups felt a little chalky. It was the Chiefs all three times against the Eagles twice, the Niners. Like, not really many surprising matchups. I feel like we'd see a matchup that might be a little more out of the box this year. So I'm very excited to see how that plays out. And by let's say 10:30 on Sunday night, the entire NFL postseason picture will be solidified. And Lucas and I will be back next week to preview that and do our last regular season recap episode. But before we get into that, we got to go today. And next Monday, the day after Sunday, is a big day on the NFL calendar. It is Black Monday, meaning many coaches and GMs, for that matter, will unfortunately be relieved of their duties and be looking for new jobs. And so, Lucas, I'm going to go through every single position, every single coach slash team that there's some question marks there. Now, there's some teams that have caveats, whether, do they lose this week or whether what round of the playoffs they lose in. And then, of course, there's the teams that are already eliminated. So we're going to go division by division. So, look, Mike Vrabel and the Patriots obviously is safe. Sean McDermott and the Bills, I think, look, he's not going to be, this is guys who could be fired on Monday. And McDermott won't be because the Bills are going to be in the playoffs. That's a case of like if they lose in the first round, maybe it's a conversation. But we're going to start in Florham Park with the New York Jets and Aaron Glenn. Aaron Glenn is a first-year head coach who, to be fair to him, is dealing with a very, very poor roster. But they are non-competitive in these games. They have a point differential of damn near negative 200 over the last month. They are 3-13. They're fresh off of losing by 35 at home to New England. So there's a possibility that Aaron Glenn could be a one and done coach, assuming they lose the Bills. They're a 3-win football team. It's kind of a weird situation where the bar was pretty low for the Jets this year, but I know they don't have the worst record, but just by the eye test, they're, I would say, maybe the least competitive team in the league. If you want to throw the Raiders in there, I'd listen. So, Lucas, do you think Aaron Glenn will have a job on Monday?
I do. I do not think he's going to get fired. Whether people agree he should or should not be fired is kind of beside the point. It doesn't sound like the Jets are interested in firing him. Maybe that's them being respectful towards Aaron Glenn, and they're not going to let the news leak that they're going to relieve him of his duties until after the season's over. But it doesn't sound like he's going to be fired, so I'm going to say no. And I kind of agree with it. Like, I just think I understand they look non-competitive, but like they had like no expectations going into the year. So I think that somewhat pragmatic. Like, it's not like he's doing a poor job leading the locker room. I mean, they traded away their two best defensive players and two of their best players in the middle of the season, so I don't really know what they're expecting. So I'm going to say he's safe.
Yeah, and also Garrett Wilson's been out for the vast majority of the year. Look, I think the Jets have the least talented roster in football. I think they're the worst, 1 through 53, the worst roster in the league. Besides Breece Hall, they really have no players and a couple offensive linemen. They have no players really worth getting excited about, with Garrett Wilson being out, with Sauce Gardner being traded and Quinnen Williams being traded. I think Aaron Glenn will get another shot next year. If next year goes poorly, then I think he could be out. One thing about Woody Johnson, who obviously is a horrible owner, but he doesn't really fire coaches early. I mean, Robert Saleh went 4-13 his first year. He got a few more years to figure it out. Hell, Adam Gase didn't get fired after his first season. So I think Aaron Glenn will get another chance, another offseason. We'll see how they use those picks. We'll see if they get a real quarterback in the building, because the quarterback room this year of Justin Fields and Brady Cook, shout out Mizzou, Brady Cook, and Tyrod Taylor, whatever the hell's left of him, you're not going to win a lot of games with that. So I think Aaron Glenn will, and I don't know if he should, just because, like I said, they're so uncompetitive, but I think he will get back and get another chance. All right, staying in the division with the Miami Dolphins, Mike McDaniel. The Dolphins sit at 7-9. They will be going to Foxborough to take on the Patriots this week. And at the earlier in the year, it looked like a foregone conclusion that McDaniel would not be the Dolphins coach in 2026. They were 1-6. They were looking like maybe the worst team in the league. But to their credit, they've kind of turned it around. I believe they've won they're 6-3 over their past 9 games. So McDaniel looks like he's at least kept the locker room together. They're fresh off a win against Tampa. So they've at least stayed in it until the end. This is an interesting one because this one has looked like how the season progresses. It looks like, things can change and opinions can change. So I personally think we'll rotate and when we give our answers and what we think is going to happen. I personally think Mike McDaniel will be back in 2026. I think he's done enough to save his job with their little, run, if you want to call it that, in the second half of the season.
Yeah, I agree. I think a lot of the people in the Dolphins organization are realizing their drafting and kind of their overall roster management has been more of a problem than coaching, as well as the quarterback. So I agree. I think Mike McDaniel should be back, and I don't necessarily disagree with that decision. I think he's a better coach than people give him credit for. I don't think he's perfect, but I do think he'll be back in 2026.
All right, so we're gonna only go with teams just for time purposes. We're gonna only go with teams that are already eliminated. So we're not going to discuss John Harbaugh. We're not going to discuss Mike Tomlin because their teams could still make the playoffs. So we're going to go to Cincinnati and Zach Taylor. The Bengals are 6-10. They are weirdly 5-2 in games that Joe Burrow has played this year. So with Burrow in the lineup, they've been a solid team, but without him, they were a complete mess. Look, a lot of Bengals fans are sick of Zach Taylor. I can't really say I blame them. That Super Bowl run was a long time ago. They have not made the playoffs in 3 years. But Mike Brown is a very, very patient owner to a fault. Marvin Lewis was there for, I believe, 17 years and didn't even win a damn playoff game. Zach Taylor has been to a Super Bowl. He's been to 2 conference championships. And there has been leaks that he will be back in 2026. So, Lucas, when the clock strikes midnight on Monday, will Zach Taylor still be the head coach of the Cincinnati Bengals?
Yes, for a lot of the reasons you say. I think the Bengals are going to scapegoat yet again a Joe Burrow injury. I think Taylor should be fired. They should get an upgrade, but this is what we think will happen, so I'm going to go with he is safe.
I think he is. So we've agreed on everyone. I don't think he should be. Like I just think Zach Taylor. I just think he can do better. I don't think he's an awful coach. He has accomplished, a decent amount there for a franchise that was pretty downtrodden when he arrived. But sometimes things run their course, and I think the Zach Taylor era in Cincinnati has run its course. I understand like he's an offensive coach, and their offense has been good when Burrow's been healthy. The defense has been what's been the problem. But he's the head coach. He is not the offensive coordinator. So in some sense, he does bear some responsibility for how they play defensively. But he's more accomplished than Marvin Lewis, who was there for damn near 2 decades. So I think he will be back next year, to the chagrin of pretty much every Bengals fan that I know. All right, staying in the state, their Week 18 opponent this week, Kevin Stefanski of the Cleveland Browns. The Browns at 4-12. They've won just 7 games over the past 2 seasons. They will be in Cincinnati against the Bengals in the last week of the season. I think we saw some leaks that the Browns have already began preparing for a coaching change. I think that tells me what I need to know. I do not think Stefanski will be back. I think he will be fired on Monday. The thing is, I don't even think Stefanski is an awful coach. I just think the Browns organization has made him look worse than he is. He has taken them to the playoffs a couple times. He's been coach of the year twice. But the roster, especially on offense, is very uncompetitive. And I think Stefanski maybe gave one last middle finger to the Browns organization by winning that game against Pittsburgh last Sunday to kind of ruin their draft position and take them out of reach for one of these quarterbacks, whether it's Mendoza or Dante Moore. The Browns very likely won't even be picking in the top 5 at this point. So I do think he will be fired. I actually do think he'll get another head coaching job because people will see the Browns. He went to the playoffs twice with that franchise. At least with adults in the front office, in the ownership group, we can accomplish maybe a little more. But I don't think he'll be in Cleveland next year.
Yeah, I'm pretty much exactly like you. I don't think he's a terrible coach. I just think it's time, and I don't think he would mind. I don't think he would mind being fired. He'll be paid, and he'll get out of that dumpster fire. So I think he's gone, and would imagine he'll be like one of the maybe one or two coaches that was fired that'll get another job immediately if he wants one. So it wouldn't be surprising if the Giants called him and be like, "Hey, you want to come coach Jackson Dart?" Like that wouldn't shock me. But yeah, I do think his time in Cleveland is up.
Yeah, and he has been linked to the Giants job. Of course, the Giants and the Titans are jobs that are already open, so we're not going to go there. I don't think Mike Kafka and Mike McCoy are getting many interviews to coach those teams next year. So we'll go to the AFC South now, a team that would have been unfathomable 2 months ago. Shane Steichen in the Indianapolis Colts, the Indianapolis Colts, excuse me. They start 7-1. They have won one game since the start of November. They've completely fallen flat on their face. Obviously, the Daniel Jones injury made matters worse, him tearing his Achilles against Jacksonville, but they had already lost, I believe, 3 of their last 4 games before Jones got hurt. Steichen, this is his third year. They've never made the playoffs. They've never been bad. They've never won less than 8 games in a season, but they've never been great either. I mean, his best season there, even with a win at Houston on Sunday, which I don't see happening, is 9-8. So he's never won double-digit games. When you combine that fact and the fact that like this team, context be damned, was 7-1 and was eliminated from the playoffs before the last week of the season, maybe like the new ownership group, Carly Ursay Gordon and the new ownership group is turned off by that and gets him out of there. Lucas, what say you? Do you think Shane Steichen will survive Black Monday?
I think he will. I just think if the ownership group was smart, they realized not every coach would lead Daniel Jones to a 7-1 record or what it is. I wouldn't say I would blame them if he was fired. Like if you remember last year, I made the bold prediction that
Yeah, I remember.
would have fired Shane Steichen, and I still stand by that prediction. I don't think it was totally invalid at the time, but I'm going to kind of lean the opposite. I think the Colts are going to bring him back next year.
Yeah, I do too. I think they'll give him another shot. I don't think this collapse is really on Steichen. He even got some borderline efficient play out of Phillip Rivers, 44-year-old Phillip Rivers. Put up decent efficiency stats, especially against the Niners in Seattle. So I do think Steichen will get another chance. But I think next year is kind of playoffs or bust for him. Like if they don't make the playoffs next year or even win a game in the playoffs, I think he's probably gone. But I think next year is probably make or break for Steichen.
Yeah.
All right, Lucas, AFC West, last AFC team here. Pete Carroll and the Raiders. When Pete Carroll was hired by the Raiders, he was supposed to bring them back to some respectability. Instead, they've had their worst team in like almost over a decade, which is saying a lot because they've been bad more often than not. They are 2-14. They are one loss away from securing the first overall pick in the upcoming draft. Pete Carroll is 75 years old. He is the oldest coach in NFL history. Do you think Pete Carroll is out on Black Monday? I don't know if they're going to fire him, or do you think he steps down? Do you think he retires? Do you think Pete Carroll's back coaching the Raiders next year?
I mean, you kind of stole the words out of my mouth. I don't think he's back, but I don't think they're going to fire him. He'll probably end up taking like an advisory role. Like, hey, they'll make him like a senior advisor to football operations. Like, so maybe they'll like shift him to a different role, but I don't think he's going to be the head coach next year for the Raiders nonetheless.
No, I'd be shocked. I mean, they've won at most 3 games. They were a lot of people like Lucas. A lot of people predicted this team to make the playoffs this year. It's not like this is a situation where everybody expected them to be awful. Like they had reasonable expectations for the first time in a while this year, and they ended up being the worst team in the NFL. So, look, Pete Carroll's a highly accomplished NFL head coach, but I just think the game's passed him by. I wouldn't be opposed to having him being in a front office or scouting role or something like that. But I just don't think he's fit to be a head coach in the NFL anymore. I think he's probably out, at least in the head coaching position. All right, going out to the NFC East. I think we both agree Dan Quinn, given what they accomplished last year, will be back in 2026. The Giants' job is already open. NFC North, I think all 4 of those coaches will definitely be back. Todd Bowles is a weird one because they're still alive, so we're not going to discuss that one. But actually we will, because a lot of things need to go the Buccaneers' way. They need to beat the Panthers tomorrow. And even if they beat the Panthers, they need the Saints to beat the Falcons in Atlanta. So, Lucas, if one of these 2 things happens, if the Buccaneers lose to the Panthers, or even if they win and the Falcons beat the Saints, do you think Todd Bowles survives Black Monday?
I do not. I think Todd Bowles is done. Even if they win the division, they're probably going to lose in the first round anyways. I think the Bucs management is very pragmatic. and they have to realize like Todd Bowles can't come back another year. They're not an impatient organization. They're also not a too patient organization, kind of like Cincinnati. I do think they realized, okay, Todd Bowles has run his course, had a great start, but the team just kind of collapsed down the stretch. I know they were injured, but they were injured early on in the season when they were winning, so they kind of really can't use that as an excuse. So I think Jason Light's going to have to. I think Jason Light's going to have to make a change of head coach and realize that Todd Bowles is not like one of the worst coaches in the NFL, but if the Bucs really want to win another Super Bowl, they're going to have to get someone else.
I tend to agree. And then there was a report from, I think it was one of the national guys, whether it was Rappaport or Schefter, that he's safe for next year. I think that's more so like, look, this team's still alive. We're not going to announce like, oh, we're going to fire our coach when we're trying to win the division. I think if they lose or the Falcons win, I think he's probably out. I think maybe they, again, if he doesn't want to keep coaching, maybe they elevate him to a front office role, which they did with Bruce Arians when he stepped down. Or he goes and is a defensive coordinator somewhere. But I mean, this is a team that was 5-1, was 6-2 at their bye, and they've won one game since then. It was a 3-point win over a god awful Arizona Cardinals team, who we'll get to later on. I just think there's no reason to keep it back. He's a defensive coach, and their defense has been really bad the last 2 years. Even last year when they won 10 games in the division, their defense, especially their passing defense, was awful. I don't know, like he's done an okay job there. I mean, they've won the division every year he's been there. But that's not really saying much given how bad that division is. Like one year they won it with an 8-9 record, Tom Brady's last year. I just think he's a very, very low ceiling head coach. And if you're Jason Light, you're like, okay, this is a team that was supposed to be a borderline contender this year, and we might not even win 8 games. I just think it's time for a change. Now, Bowles was extended this past offseason, but we've seen instances where coaches are extended and they have a really bad season and then they get let go in January. I think this could be one of them if the Buccaneers do not make the playoffs. All right, sticking in the division, one that seems a lot less certain now than it did even like 3 weeks ago. Raheem Morris in Atlanta. The Falcons were 4-9. They've won 3 in a row, including a shocking upset win against the Rams on Monday. Raheem Morris, I texted you about this, Lucas. I think he might be doing just enough to convince Arthur Blank, to convince Falcons, brass that like, hey, one more year, give me one more year. And I think that's what's going to happen. I think, especially if they beat the Saints at home, I think Raheem Morris, there's a decent chance he survives Black Monday and is back in Atlanta next year. And if you're a Falcons fan, I don't know how you could feel good about that because I do not think Raheem Morris is a good head coach. Even though they've won, they're on a little bit of a winning streak here. They don't have a first round pick, so it's not like they're tanking draft position or in any capacity. But yeah, I think Raheem Morris has done enough to save his job, which sounded crazy a month ago.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think Raheem Morris should absolutely be fired, all due respect, but I think these like shocking like wins down the stretch, like beating the Rams, and the game was not really as close as the final score indicated. Like the Rams had a comeback that was aided by a blocked field goal.
Yeah.
Touchdown, yeah. And then so I think Arthur Blank's going to give him one more year because I think Arthur Blank really is one of those coaches that doesn't, or owners that does not like to like recycle coaches and likes to give him every chance possible. So I'm going to say Raheem Morris gets a 3rd year, kind of like Arthur Smith did.
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely. All right, last one, Lucas. Arizona, the Cardinals, they're 3-13. They started 2-0. They've won 1 game since. Jonathan Gannon is in his 3rd year. First year, they went 4-13. Last year, they went 8-9. And this year, obviously, has been a complete train wreck. There's reports that Gannon will be back next year. I vehemently disagree with those. But I'm not going on what I think should happen. I'm going off what I think will happen. And I think Gannon somehow, some way, will scapegoat Kyler Murray and return as the Cardinals coach next year, which I think, similar to Atlanta, I think is a colossal mistake. I think this is a situation where we're like 3 weeks into the season next year, and the Cardinals are like, man, we probably shouldn't have done that. We probably should have made a change when we had the chance, and they didn't. I think Gannon's going to be back based on everything I've heard. I don't think he should be, but I think it looks like he's going to be.
This is the first one we're going to disagree with, and my gut tells me you're right, but I just don't really understand what's the argument. Yeah, I just don't understand. Like, I know they're going to blame Kyler Murray, but like, Kyler Murray's not like a rancid quarterback. Like I know he's
Kyler
not
Murray
like
also hasn't played since week 5.
Yeah, exactly. Like
they 2 of the 3 wins were with Kyler Murray at quarterback.
Yeah, and I think the ownership in Arizona is probably quietly under the radar. Somehow a bottom 5 ownership group in the NFL. I don't know the guy's name. It's Michael Bidwell. I think it's Michael Bidwell. That's the owner.
Michael Bidwell, yeah.
Yeah, that's really, really does not care about the team. Like, I think there are a bunch of owners that don't care about the outcome of the team. They just care about the profit and loss. I think Michael Bidwell is objectively one of those owners. And I think you're right. He will end up staying, but like my brain just says he should be fired, and so that's what I'm going to go with. I'll disagree here just to give us some difference of opinion.
Yeah.
So I'm going to say he will be gone.
Yeah, so at least we had one disagreement because I feel like a lot of them were pretty cut and dry. Now there could be some surprises. Again, like what's the argument to bring Jonathan Gannon back? At least with the Falcons, Raheem Morris. Like, okay, they're still playing hard. They're getting some wins here down the stretch. It looks like he's kept the locker room somewhat together. Like, what's the point of bringing back Jonathan Gannon in Arizona next year? I don't think there is one. So, for the record, the coaches that we think both of us think will be fired on Monday are Kevin Stefanski, Pete Carroll, not necessarily fired, but out of a job. Todd Bowles, assuming the Buccaneers miss the playoffs. And then I think Jonathan Gannon will be fired. You think Jonathan Gannon will be fired. I don't. And coaches that we think are safe are Aaron Glenn, Mike McDaniel, Zach Taylor, Shane Steichen, Raheem Morris, and I think Gannon will be back, and that's our one disagreement. So we'll see what happens. We'll discuss it next week. We'll find out Monday, maybe Tuesday, which coaches are gone, which GMs are gone of teams that disappointed this year. That's why it's called Black Monday, because it's when some NFL employees are out of a job, at least for the time being. All right, Lucas, next topic. The Philadelphia Eagles have won 3 in a row. They get a big win in Orchard Park against the Bills. They win 13-12. And I texted you about this when they beat Washington. I understand beating Washington is not exactly a high bar. I get it. But this Eagles team, at least in my opinion, I don't think is the clear contender in the NFC. I think Seattle's better than them. I think the Rams are better than them. I would argue San Francisco is better than them. You could go either way there. Certainly offensively, the Eagles are obviously better on defense. But that was the case of another defending champion a couple years ago in the Chiefs in 2023, where the Ravens were definitely a better team throughout the season. You could argue the Bills were a better team that year, but the Chiefs beat both of them in their buildings, went to the Super Bowl again, and won it again. I think there's some similarities between this Eagles team and the 2023 Chiefs, where they're the defending Super Bowl champions. They had a bit of a rocky regular season. They have a really, really good defense. They have a very inconsistent, to put it kindly, offense, but they do have championship pedigree, which is difficult to bet against in January. The Seahawks don't have that. The Niners have experience, like they've been to Super Bowls, but they haven't won it. This iteration of the Rams really hasn't. I know Stafford and McVay have, but a lot of those players from that Super Bowl team are no longer there. Like, it's a very, very different team. This Eagles team is the only team as a collective that's won a Super Bowl together recently in the NFC side of the bracket. So do you think there's similarities between the Eagles and the 2023 Chiefs, or do you think their offense is just too, I don't know, like anemic, cowardly because whenever they get a lead, they play this prevent offense, which is, like I said the other day, it's the most chicken shit way to play football. I hate watching it. Or do you think their defense will go on a run like the Chiefs did in 2023 and get them to another championship?
I think I see the similarities, but the difference is most likely, barring something very unforeseen, like maybe if the Lions beat the Bears somehow in Week 18, they'll probably end up playing the Rams in the wild card round. That's not a lock. And the main difference is the Chiefs pretty much got a bye week, their first playoff game that year, to pick up some momentum against the Dolphins in that 30 below wind chill game against the Dolphins, which were already a soft team. Like the Rams in Philadelphia, I don't care if the Eagles won in Week 3 or whatever it was. I would pick the Rams to win that playoff game unless like Stafford gets hurt and there's a backup or he's clearly playing injured. So I would take the Rams. But I think if they get past that, like the path is there. They could end up with Sam Darnold in the playoffs at home in Philadelphia. Good luck, Seattle. I don't care if, like what their record is. like then the NFC Championship game would be either, I would say, again at Chicago. Oh no, they can't play. The three can't play the two in the NFC Championship game. So it would
I
probably be
know.
at San Francisco, in which that's a beat up team. That's a Niners team that could be the number one seed, but it's one of the weaker playoff teams they have. I think maybe the team in 2021 that was like a 6 seed might be a stronger team, but this team is a better
Yeah.
seed. So like the matchup could be there. I would say if they get past the wild card round, look out. But I I just don't trust Nick Sirianni to keep this team together. I see the similarities, so they're back in my Super Bowl bubble, but I'm not going to sit here and be like, oh yeah, I believe in them. And to be fair, that's how I was with the 2023 Chiefs. Like I
Oh,
picked
for
them to beat
sure.
Miami, and I picked them to lose in Buffalo and in Baltimore. So I was skeptical of that Chiefs team until they won the AFC Championship game, and like, okay, they're definitely going to win the Super Bowl. So I think for
Yeah.
me, if they could beat the Rams and then get to the NFC Championship game, I will pick them to go all the way.
No, that's completely fair. I think for the Eagles, it looks like they're resting starters against Washington. If you're the Eagles, you're big Lions fans this week because no, that Chiefs team was the 3 seed. That's what the Eagles are right now. But if the Eagles beat the Commanders, and the Commanders stink so bad, like they still might win that game even with resting starters, and the Bears lose to the Lions, which is certainly possible. I think Dan Campbell will still have his team up and ready to go for that game. That means they move up to the 2 and they're playing the Packers, which are it's pretty close to a mash unit at this point with all their injuries. You'd much rather play the Packers than the Rams. And then the Bears would have to play the Rams. So I think if the Eagles can somehow get the 2 seed, I would give them a decent shot to get back to the Super Bowl. If they get the 3 seed and get the Rams, I know they've had the Rams number. Then it gets much tougher because this Rams team and the 2023 Dolphins, not the same. Not the same at all. So I think if you're the Eagles, you obviously want to beat the Commanders, even without your starters, because the Commanders are that bad. And like you're paying attention to that Lions game, and you're really hoping the Lions beat the Bears. But they are a team that I do think their defense is good enough where they can create havoc against any team they play. All right, let's do a quick MVP debate because the MVP race has really heated up over the last handful of weeks. It's between two guys. It's a two-man race at this point. It's Matthew Stafford and it's Drake Maye. And all season, most of the season, I was saying Stafford is the MVP. He has been the best quarterback this year, and he has the best numbers this year. He has thrown 42 touchdowns to just 8 interceptions. However, Drake May's numbers are also phenomenal. Drake Maye has a higher completion percentage. Drake Maye is averaging more yards per attempt. Drake Maye has been more accurate by pretty much every metric. And Drake Maye, fair or not, more importantly, has won more games. Drake Maye has won his division. Matthew Stafford did not. Drake Maye is 13-3. Matthew Stafford is 11-5. Matthew Stafford has also lost back-to-back games in primetime, in which he had an opportunity to really put the Rams in better playoff position. Not that the Seattle game was his fault, but he played very poorly against Atlanta. He threw 3 interceptions in that game, whereas Maye had his best game of the year, arguably against the Jets. Now, take that for whatever it's worth. So it's a really, really interesting debate because Stafford's numbers, it's similar to Allen and Lamar last year, where Stafford's numbers are better, but his team is worse, which means Drake Maye, the voters look at, okay, this guy won his division. This guy might be 14-3 compared to 12-5. Like the last MVP winner to not win their division, that was a quarterback, so not counting Adrian in 2012, was Peyton Manning in 2008. And that was a really, really weak race. If you remember, Brady was out that year. Just that was a weird season. So if I had to vote, this is the first time I've said this all year, I'd give it to Drake Maye for multiple reasons. One, he's won more games. Two, he has a worse supporting cast. And Stafford, to be fair, has played a tougher schedule. I get that. But May's numbers I believe he's thrown 30 touchdowns this year. So
Yep, exactly.
Drake Maye this year is completing 72% of his passes. He's like the volume's there. Like this isn't like Lamar in 2023 where he had low volume. He's thrown for 4,200 yards, 30 touchdowns, 8 interceptions. They have the same number of interceptions, and his quarterback rating is 112.9, which is phenomenal. Matthew Stafford this season has thrown 42 touchdowns to 8 interceptions. He's thrown for more yards, 4,400 to 4,200, but not much, not a big gap there. His completion percentage is much lower. It's 65%, which is 6 points lower than Maye's. And his passer rating is lower. It's 108.8. So Maye's numbers are good enough. They're much better than Josh Allen's were last year when he won, much better than Lamar Jackson's were in 2023. He's won more games. He's been more efficient. He has a worse play caller. I like Josh McDaniels, but he's not Sean McVay as a play caller. And he has far worse receivers, and he has a worse, worse supporting cast in terms of offensive line play, running game. So Pro Football Impact, I actually want to throw this out there. Pro Football Impact made a post today ranking every offensive situation in the NFL. To their metrics, if it will load, Matthew Stafford is in the best situation a quarterback can be in. He has the best weapons in the league. He has the second best play calling in the league. His offensive line is not great. It's 25th. So that's one area. Drake Maye is 5th. So it's still really good, but not quite as good. His offensive line is better by these metrics, which is weird because Maye's been sacked a lot this year. His weapons are 11th. So best weapons in the league to not even top 10. And his play calling's 8th. So still good, but second in the league to 8th in the league. It's a decent sized gap. I would give the vote to Maye for those reasons. I think he's done more with less, and I think his superior efficiency and the fact that he is going to win his division is the tiebreaker for me.
Yeah, this is tough. For the record, I do think Drake Maye will end up winning the award. And principally, I don't know if I disagree with that too much because I do believe that MVP winners should win their division. I think the last one to do so, or to be a wild card, was Adrian Peterson in 2012.
The last quarterback was Peyton in 2008.
Yeah, the last quarterback, yeah. But the last non-MVP or less quarterback or MVP in general. If I had a vote, I'd give it to Stafford. I understand.
Okay. I'm glad. I wanted to disagree. I wanted to disagree on this.
Like it's like because like there are arguments for both sides. Like if it's like it's two sides of the same coin. It's not like we're arguing over like reality or stuff like that. Reality is Drake has less help than Matthew Stafford does, but also Matthew Stafford just objectively has played better football. He's been a better football player this season. There's no doubt about it. Like Matthew Stafford's a PFF grade of 93. Drake Maye's at 89. Like that's the difference between 89 and 93 is not the same difference between 84 and 80. It's a big difference. But also, we'll get more objective, not subjective. Matthew Stafford has a big time throw rate of 7.8%. The next closest is Sam Darnold at 6.1%. And the turnover-worthy play rate, Matthew Stafford is among, not near the bottom, not like at the bottom, but near the bottom, has a 2.7 turnover-worthy play rate, which is less than Drake Maye. And the Rams have also had a considerably harder schedule. Like according to PFF, like the Patriots have the easiest schedule in the NFL at 32nd. Second easiest has been the Dolphins, so not a ringing endorsement of Mike McDaniel. But then the Rams have had the 10th hardest schedule. So nothing like extremely, extremely difficult, but so far, I would probably just give it to Stafford just because I think a lot of it is equal. So if you want to have the tiebreaker be one of them won their division, the other did not, fair enough. I'm going to go with just who was the better player. And I think Stafford was the better player this year. There are arguments. He has the better supporting cast. He kind of lost a few key games down the stretch and clutch moments that cost his team playoff position and could cost his team a Super Bowl victory. But at the same time, I do think Stafford just has been the better player, and that's the difference for me. I do think if it was a little bit closer, like I think if Stafford was, instead of playing significantly better, was just a little bit better, I'd probably give it to Maye. But I think the gap is pretty clear in my opinion.
Okay, that's fair. So, like, look, it's good arguments. I don't think it'd be a robbery either way. I think both quarterbacks. I think they've been the two best quarterbacks in the league this year. Two most consistent quarterbacks. One more thing in Drake Maye's favor before we move on to our next topic. So, this guy on Twitter, Stephen Patton at Patton Analytics, posted this chart, and this was before this past weekend's game. So this gap would even widen with Maye's performance against the Jets and Stafford's performance against the Falcons. So the number that they're quantifying here is cumulative production for the MVP candidates, and it's expected points added for passes and runs. So that's one thing Drake Maye does add that Stafford doesn't. Drake Maye has been a really effective scrambler. He adds to the running game with his athleticism, whereas Stafford adds nothing as a runner. Absolutely nothing. He's, besides Aaron Rodgers, might be the most immobile starting quarterback in the league at this point. So Maye on these plays has 633, Stafford 578. Maye's EPA is 189.5. Stafford's is 129.3. So a pretty big gap there. pretty big gap in Drake May's favor. He's had more plays and he's been more efficient on those plays. I just want to throw that out there. Look, you can make a good choice either way, but I would give it to number 10 in New England for this season. All righty, Lucas. Last topic, we'll do a quick preview of the game tomorrow night to determine the number 1 seed in the NFC between the San Francisco 49ers and the Seattle Seahawks. And then we'll give our picks in our pick segment here later on. So the game is in Santa Clara. The Niners beat Seattle in week 1 this year. The Seahawks were driving down the field, and then Sam Darnold was strip sacked by Nick Bosa. Niners recover, they win the game. This game is interesting in the sense because Seattle, for much of the year, people have been widely considered one of the best teams in the NFL. Them and the Rams have been considered like the class of the NFC. Whereas the Niners have really kind of flown under the radar due to their injuries, due to the fact that Fred Warner's been out, that Nick Bosa's been out. And admittedly, when Warner got hurt, I kind of stopped paying attention to them as a contender. Like, yeah, they might make the playoffs, but they're not anything serious. Well, here they are at 12-4 in a position to get the 1 seed in a postseason where the Super Bowl is in their building, which could be a motivating factor for them. An interesting matchup for me will be Kyle Shanahan against Mike McDonald. I think that's the most intriguing one. You have maybe the best offensive mind in the league against maybe the best defensive head coach in the league. I just think, will the Niners be able to score enough points against that Seattle defense to win? And this is a defense that just held Carolina to 54 passing yards. And you could say, oh, it's Carolina. Well, Carolina might be a division winner this year. It's not like they're a complete joke of a team. But the week prior to that against the Rams, I mean, they won the game, credit to them. They got cooked for most of that game by Stafford and that offense, despite the fact that they did not have Devontae Adams. And the Niners will be getting George Kittle back. They scored 42 points without Kittle last Sunday night against Chicago. So, and if Brock Purdy can play like he has the last 2 games, really the last 3 games, in which he's played some of the most efficient football since taking over as the starting quarterback, I think it could be a problem for Seattle because their offense really quietly, not great over the last month. It's been masked by the fact that they've been winning. Sam Darnold has struggled over the last handful of games, and the Niners defense is not talented. It's really not talented. I mean, I challenge anyone to name the starting 11 on the San Francisco 49ers defense as currently constructed. It'll be hard. It will not be easy. This is not the defense that, went to the Super Bowl a couple years ago against the Chiefs, but they're well coached. They're well coached, and I think maybe coaching exceeds talent. And this is a defense that, look, they got lit up by Caleb Williams and company, but they made the crucial stop at the end. Like, they have gotten, I think their lack of talent has exposed them at times this year, but I'm curious to know if Robert Saleh can create issues for Darnold in this game. And if the Niners get to say like 20 points, and that might not seem like a lot, but if they can get to 20 points, will that be enough to win given Seattle's recent offensive struggles?
This is tough because if I was just going,
I'm getting a water, by the way.
Yep. If I was going purely based off X's and O's, I would probably go with Seattle. I know the Niners defense is well coached, but like their underlying numbers are pretty atrocious. They're a bottom 7 defense in the NFL just by analytics, and the run defense is near the bottom as well.
They can't rush the passer at all. They make the Chiefs look like the 85 Bears from pass rushing standpoint.
Exactly. And Darnold is a much, much better quarterback when kept clean. And yeah, I understand that applies to pretty much every quarterback in NFL history. They're better when not under pressure. But at the same time, Darnold is one of the best quarterbacks when kept clean. Like, yes, he's top 6, 7 in, that's unintentional, in PFF grade when kept clean. And I'm looking at where he ranks in passer rating. His passer rating, he's like 9th. So he's a much better quarterback when pressured, when kept clean. I'm talking out of my ass right now. But when he's under pressure, he turns into a much, much different guy. When he's under pressure, he's 28th out of 43 qualified quarterbacks. So if the Niners really, really want to win this game, the safest way is just to make sure Sam Darnold's uncomfortable. The problem is the run defense isn't very good either. So Kenneth Walker and Zach Charbonnet go nuts in this game. But at the same time, I don't trust Sam Darnold. We saw what happened in Detroit and LA last year, or technically it was
Mm-hmm.
Glendale, when it was a must-win game. There's all the marbles were on the table. Didn't go very well for Minnesota. I could tell you that firsthand, and I don't think it's going to go well for Seattle. I think the Seahawks are the better overall team. Last year, you could argue Detroit was better than Minnesota, even with the injuries. And I know Seattle, I think, is a more talented team as currently constructed. I'm going to go with the team whose quarterback is playing much, much, much better over the past 3 weeks, and the more experienced team. Maybe Seattle ends up winning just because they're better, but I'm going to take San Francisco. Not to spoil my pick.
Oh, so you just spoiled your pick. So Lucas is taking the Niners.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, our pick
I was already
segment is
alluding to
coming
it
up right
anyways.
after this, so like not much time. Yeah, like I mean, I think it's hard to get over Darnold's play. It's deja vu. Sam Darnold is playing for the 1 seed again for a team that's won at minimum 13 games on the road. Again, it was in Detroit last year. And the Lions defense at this point in the season last year is very similar to the Niners defense, where they were just ravaged by injuries, but they were well coached with Aaron Glenn. And Aaron Glenn just absolutely destroyed Sam Darnold in that game. And I'm wondering if Robert Saleh can overcompensate for the lack of talent that they have on that side of the ball to hold down Seattle's offense. If they take away JSN and say, fine, beat us with Cooper Kupp and Rashid Shaheed, I mean, try to do it. I don't know. But I'm very excited to watch the game. That's by far the most interesting game this weekend. And speaking of this weekend, as I pull up the schedule, it is the final week of the 2025 regular season, the final week in which all 32 teams will be playing, the final week in which the Chiefs will be playing, Lucas. We can't say that. First time we say that since 2014. They will end their pretty nightmarish season in Las Vegas against the Raiders in the late window.
They can go out gambling. They can go out gambling after the game to celebrate their awesome season.
Yeah, I mean, like, there's not much to celebrate. I'll tell you that much. I'll be curious to see like who plays for the Chiefs in that game, if I'm being honest. But anyways, pick segment. The first game tomorrow afternoon, the NFC South Championship, somewhat because of those other factors that go into this. Between the Buccaneers and the Panthers, the game is in Tampa Bay. I'm taking the Panthers. There's no reason for me to believe in the Buccaneers. I don't know if they're capable of winning another game, quite honestly. So I'm taking Carolina to get in the postseason for the first time since 2017. And then the nightcap, the game we just discussed, Niners Seahawks. I'm with Lucas. I'm taking the Niners at home. Again, I think a lot of it comes down to my lack of trust in Sam Darnold in this spot. And I think the Niners will do just enough to win and get a 1 seed that I think is pretty shocking, that nobody saw coming. Considering the fact that a lot of people consider the other 2 teams in their division as the 2 best teams in the league, and they don't even win. They both start the playoffs on the road. It's pretty wild. It's a pretty good summarization of this season. All right, and then we go to the Sunday slate, starting in the early window. Falcons Saints. Give me the Falcons at home to win, and just another reason for Raheem Morris to run it back next year. Sorry, Atlanta. Bengals Browns. I'll take the Bengals at home. Texans Colts. I have a very difficult time seeing Riley Leonard going into Houston and beating this defense. Give me Houston. Jaguars Titans. I feel like this game is gonna be closer than people think. But I picked the Titans last week and got burned. I'll take Jacksonville at home to lock up the AFC South. Vikings Packers. It looks like they're Clayton Tune might be starting for the Packers in this game. Give me the Vikings to miraculously get a winning season out of this year. I don't know how it happened, but credit to Kevin O'Connell and company. Giants Cowboys. I'll take Dallas in this game. And then we go to the late window. Bills Jets. I'll take the Bills. Even if they rest starters, I don't see them losing to the Jets in the final game at Highmark Stadium, or likely the final game at Highmark Stadium, I should say. Bears Lions. I'm actually going to take the Lions on the road to win this one. I think they're going to be motivated to not have a losing record this year. And I think they go into Chicago and win and end a disappointing season on at least a high note. Broncos Chargers. I'll take the Broncos to clinch the 1 seed. It looks like the Chargers are taking a dive in this game and not playing starters. So give me Denver. Rams Cardinals. I'll take the Rams by 1 million. I think they'll be motivated to get some momentum going to the playoffs. Raiders, Chiefs. I'll take the Chiefs. I think they get a win. I think they get their first win since week 12. I think the Raiders are just so hell-bent on getting that first pick that not even the Chiefs can out-tank them in this game. Patriots, Dolphins. Obviously, I'm taking the Patriots. I have a difficult time seeing the Dolphins winning this one. Eagles, Commanders. I'll take Philly. I know they're resting starters, but again, like I don't think it will matter against Washington. And then the final game of the regular season, Steelers, Ravens in Pittsburgh. Aaron Rodgers versus Lamar Jackson. I believe that is, if I'm correct, if I can do math here, that is 4 of the last 7 MVP winners. Yeah, you had Patrick Mahomes, you had Josh Allen.
For the past
Yeah,
6, I think.
no, 4 of the last 6. 4 of the last 6.
Yeah. If you're
Four
not
of the
counting this
last
year's 6, yeah.
Yeah, 4 of the last 6 MVP winners going at it in this game. Here's a pretty wild stat. Mike Tomlin, as a home underdog against divisional opponents, is 7-1. No, he's 7-1 against an underdog against the Ravens. He's also historically great as a home underdog against divisional opponents. I think the Steelers win. I don't even think they're the better team. I think the Ravens are the more talented football team, but the Ravens have given me no trust to believe in them in a big spot. I know they beat the Packers last week, but the Packers were so beat up. TJ Watt's going to be back. It looks like they're getting a lot of guys back, except for DK Metcalf, unfortunately for them. But I think Aaron Rodgers gets in the playoffs at least one more time. And the Ravens enter an offseason with a lot of questions if they lose this game, which I'm picking them to.
Okay, let's get rolling. Only 2 disagreements this week, so we're pretty much on the same page, but a lot of them are pretty slam dunk picks. Panthers, Bucks. Give me Carolina. I think Tampa's cooked. Niners, Seahawks, 49ers. Already spoiled it. Give me the Niners. Saints, Falcons. Give me the Falcons. Browns, Bengals by 1 million. Colts, Texans by 1 million. Titans, Jaguars. I think Jacksonville wins probably by about 2 touchdowns. Packers, Vikings. Skull. Give me the Vikings. Cowboys, Giants, Dallas. Jets, Bills. I don't think the Bills are going to want to lose this last game in their home stadium. Most likely, maybe they get a fluke AFC Championship home game, but like, give me Buffalo. Lions, Bears. I'm going to take the Bears. I think Chicago might be motivated to get a higher seed, but we'll see. Maybe Detroit's just a little bit more motivated, but I think Ben Johnson will probably want to win and not end the season on 2-game losing streak heading into the playoffs. So Chargers, Broncos. Give me Denver, of course. Cardinals, Rams. Chiefs, Raiders. I want the Chiefs to lose this game in an entertaining way, but the Raiders are just so bad that not even Chris Oladokin could save Kansas City. Dolphins, Patriots, New England. Commanders, Eagles. Give me Philadelphia. And then Ravens, Steelers. I'm going to take Baltimore, but I think Pittsburgh's going to cover the spread, which is not that big. So if I had to pick the Steelers, either the Steelers winning or I'm more comfortable in the Steelers winning than I am the Ravens winning by like 3.5 points or more, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
I'm gonna take the Ravens to win by a very close game that could go down to the final play one way or the other. So I'll take Baltimore because I think Lamar is just going to be the X factor, but he's hurt, so maybe Snoop Huntley will have to sub in eventually. But give me Baltimore, but I'm pretty low confidence on that pick.
Yeah, I don't know how you could have a lot of confidence in either one of these teams. Like the Steelers, I think they've been, to touch on this game a little bit, they've been the more consistent team this year. Like they've been in control of that division most of the year. Whereas the Ravens, obviously, they start 1-5, then they go to 6-7, and then they go to 7-8, and then they go into Green Bay against a very, very injured Packers team and win, and they get some confidence back. But with Lamar being back, are they going to give Derrick Henry the ball as much? Like Huntley barely did anything in that game, or do they rely too much on Lamar, who's even if he plays, isn't at 100%? I don't know. Very interesting. I think a lot can happen in these games. I wouldn't be shocked if the Steelers like score some like flukish like defensive touchdown in this one. Very interested to watch to see what happens. But I'll take Pittsburgh at home. All right, that wraps up our last episode during the regular season. Lucas and I will be back next Tuesday to recap the action of Week 18. We'll blow through a lot of games because a lot of them are pretty useless and pretty meaningless. We'll spend more time on the more important ones, and then later in the week we will finally give our preview for Wild Card Weekend. The playoffs are just right around the corner. So Lucas, do you have any parting thoughts before we disperse here?
I do not, and let's just have a safe and peaceful final weekend of the regular season.
Let's do it. Let's do it. All right. Thanks, everybody. We'll be back next week. And until then, see ya.